Good afternoon, all. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and a huge thank you to the Globalizing Malaysian Talents for providing me with this platform to reach out to prospective engineering graduates out there. First of all, I hope everybody is keeping safe and healthy during these unusual times, and that we all do our part to keep ourselves and those around us safe. So I really do hope that my talk today will be helpful to some of you who will be looking for a job in the near future, whether it is in the civil engineering industry or in any other industry, regardless. And I hope that this talk will help enhance your employability and hopefully will help you secure a job during these very strange times. So just a quick introduction. My name is Lucas Lau, and I work for a multinational engineering consultancy firm named Atkins. My current positions are currently on screen. So I am a civil and structural engineer by training, and it is my official title, but I have also taken on the additional role as a graduate proposal manager. This role means that I am supporting efforts within Atkins to prepare proposals, funny enough, including CVs for some of our business leaders, so that the business can secure some of the most lucrative contracts in the UK market. And if you're wondering how I was able to get multiple positions within the same at the same time, I'll get to that later in the presentation. But before I proceed with my story, I would like to just go through a little bit about what Atkins does. So just a little bit about Atkins. As I said, Atkins is a multinational engineering consultancy that serves at almost every region in the world. We are quite varied in terms of our scope of work because not only do we work on a range of infrastructure projects, from railways to stadiums to even nuclear power plants, we work also within the technology sector. We work with suppliers in aerospace, in defense, security, and technology. And we are really helping some of our national clients improve their capabilities in keeping our country safe and our infrastructure safe. I myself work within the transportation sector, specifically within the rail division. But as I said, there are quite a lot of areas which we do work on that I am not able to give more information on. But if you would like more information on down the line, feel free to drop me an email. My email will be at the end of my presentation. So one good part about being in Atkins is that we are responsible for designing and maintaining some of the UK's most prominent infrastructure schemes. Within transportation itself, you can see that we are responsible for the design for HS2, Crossrail, East-West Rail, and various national highways projects. So if you are looking for an opportunity to join Atkins, you will be quite spoiled for choice in terms of the value of experience that you will get once you secure a position within our company. So now just a little bit about myself. So about 2 years ago, I graduated from the University of Sheffield with an MN's degree in civil and structural engineering. Immediately after that, I joined Atkins as a graduate civil and structural engineer, currently based in the Swindon office. I have had a long-standing passion for structural engineering, so I was more than ecstatic to be able to join this company. My main role as a graduate civil engineer was to provide clients with robust advice for the structural aspects of their infrastructure. This might include designing new pieces of infrastructure like bridges or overhead electrification structures. We might also assess existing structures that have been there for a long time. As you can see from the picture on the right, that is a bridge in Somerset that is over 200 years old and surprisingly still operational. And I am involved in assessing whether they are still safe to be used. As I said, I am based in the rail sector, so I mainly deal with rail-related infrastructure. And my engineering knowledge is developing within that scope of work because every aspect of engineering, every single area of engineering is quite different. And the standards you work towards is also quite different. After about 5 months of design experience, I was very fortunate to be given the opportunity to take on the role as a project manager. So the scheme which I managed involved prescribing some very critical work on retaining walls that are by the railway. As a project manager, I was in charge of preparing and signing off lots of legal documents, really planning and managing different sorts of people, and making sure that there are enough resources for us to do the work and we do it right to the client's expectations. Just on the screen are just some pictures of the retaining walls. Not very exciting by the looks of it, but it is quite a tough job, to be honest. And about mid of this year, I was again very fortunate to be able to join the company's Win Work team as a graduate proposal manager. So this team, the Win Work team, specializes in helping businesses secure some of the most lucrative UK government contracts, typically over £5 million. I work with some very talented people, some talented specialists that are business leaders, engineers, and other proposal managers. And our job is to draft proposals in response to government tenders, and a part of it involves helping our key experts and our key engineers develop their CVs so that they are more marketable, and that will help us maximize our chances of gaining the confidence of the client and convincing them that we are the best firm in the market to do the job. So I've been asked to present about what my day-to-day looks like. I would say if you are fortunate enough to be an engineer in the UK, there is a lot of developmental opportunities and you will really never have a boring day. I would say that because there really isn't a standard day-to-day routine which you are supposed to do, but it really depends on which role you take on and what project you're on. But if I were to summarize in general, as a graduate civil engineer, my tasks rotate around producing designs and calculations and producing reports for the client. This involves a whole different range of infrastructure, and there is a lot of learning in the process. There is lots of working together with your colleagues, working together with the draftsperson to produce drawings, etc. Sometimes, even though I am an office-based engineer, as most consultant engineers are, I would conduct site visits to inspect railway structures and sites basically surrounding the railway. And if you have the lovely opportunity of working on the railway, and as I have, you will be glad to know that we would be conducting some of these visits dead in the middle of the night, in the middle of tracks, obviously with the necessary precautions in place, inspecting various structures, and even instructing some workers to do some very technically simple tasks. Other times, you would be going through lots of trainings in the form of either informal presentations online like these, or you would be going through official accreditation-based trainings in our various offices. Some of this training, for example, before going on site, you will need to have specific training by safety organizations that are accredited by our clients, for example, Network Rail. And you are really limited to only what you are trained and certified to do. But the good part is, as long as you have the interest to do so and that it is within your area of responsibility, the business does pay for your training and your development, and they support you every step of the way. But as a project manager, my role was a little bit more dynamic and exciting, and obviously a little bit more stressful. To put it in a simple way, it involves around doing whatever it takes to keep things moving and making sure that the project gets delivered on time and on budget. A fun way of putting this is that I had to make sure that we have the right people and resources at the right place and at the right time to do the work, making sure that they do the work safely and they do it right, according to the standards and according to the quality expectations of our clients. So I have to make sure that all the right documents are in place. I book the right people and make sure that we follow the law, because that we have very strict safety laws in the UK that we must adhere to. As you can expect, it's a lot of meeting with different types of people, negotiating different terms with our suppliers, speaking to the client, understanding what they're concerned about and how we can really serve them better. Also, on the planning side, you're really trying to preempt any risk that could endanger the health of your project, financially or physically, and monitoring your budget so that your directors are kept very happy. And as I move to the right, that is the graduate proposal manager. As a graduate proposal manager, even though it's not engineering specific, it is a lot tougher than you actually think, because we have to do whatever it takes to outflank our competitors. So there's a lot of research that goes into the role. You need to understand what the client wants, what are the general industry trends, how we as a company can leverage our own knowledge and our own people and expertise to meet those needs, and how we as a company can present ourselves in the best possible light. That means deploying the right language, the right format, having the right graphics in place in order to capture the attention of the clients. So as part of the bidding process, what our clients usually want is that they want to know who will be working on the project. So we would be preparing CVs as well, and we must show that we have the best people in the market. What I would do is to interview some of these key experts on their experience and really help bring out the necessary information and put it in the right way so that when they draft up their CVs, it is the best as it can be. Because we're doing everything in our power to produce best proposals, I was given the liberty to do a range of tasks. Some of them involve hosting an innovation workshop to help solicit the best ideas from our company experts. Some of it also involved planning a team building workshop to help the team break the ice and develop a close collaborative working relationship, and basically keep the momentum going, because we are really working in a very high pressure situation. So it's quite a dynamic role, and it's also quite intense because we have to follow a very strict deadline, because if we miss it, it means losing out on millions of pounds worth of revenue for the business. Okay, after boring you with so many of these various responsibilities, here's a little bit of what you might expect if you are looking to get a job in the UK, or at least in Atkins. So how I got my first graduate civil engineering job is quite different from how others would get them, as in applying as a graduate. I actually got the job by taking a summer placement at Atkins in the summer of 2018. The application process for getting that summer internship involved filling up an online application form, which involved basically us saying why we wanted to join Atkins, what were your aspirations within Atkins, what were your goals, I think about 5 years from now, and long-term goals about 10 years from now, etc. After we filled in the online application, what many graduates seem to stumble on is the pre-employment personality test. And this is one of the largest barriers that graduates have towards joining this company, because the company is essentially trying to filter out people with the same ideals and qualities that they expect of all their graduates and staff working within the company. So the employment test basically provides you with a series of situations or scenarios where there are 4 or 5 possible actions that you can take, which they give you as options. Depending on how you are in terms of your personality and whether you match up with the company's values, the actions actually all somewhat make sense, but you have to choose the right one, basically, to assess how you would respond to certain situations. An example question would be like, how would you respond to a colleague who openly called you out during a meeting, or who is requesting incomplete information from you? What would you do? And you would choose A, that sort of thing. After that, once all of that is done and dusted, and after a few months of sweating about whether I got the application through, I was finally called up for an interview, which I had to travel to Swindon for. The interviewers would basically ask you competency-based questions. For example, describe a situation where you had to work under pressure, and how did you deal with it? Or describe a situation where you had to show leadership. So when I was preparing for the interview, what I did was, based on all the experience and different activities that I did, I created a very small portfolio of documents and diagrams that showcase my various achievements. And I had to link those achievements to the questions that are being asked. So after that, once the competency tests are all done and dusted, I was surprised to get a technical test, which is basically a quick assessment of your engineering capabilities, because it makes sense. It is a very technical job. So what they did was they provided me with a sheet of paper with multiple choice questions on them. These were all very simple engineering questions, not very hard. Just make sure that you study up on your first year material, and you should be able to answer those quite easily. Once again, after going through the interview, it's a few more months of waiting and praying that I got the job. And eventually I was awarded the position to undertake a placement within the Swindon office. And after going through about 3 months of my internship, I basically requested and was offered the opportunity to enter the company's graduate development program. In other words, I was recruited as a graduate on the spot. This allowed me to go through my final year without really having to worry about applications or different interviews, etc. And this is quite an important point, really, because if you are really looking to get a career in the UK, it's probably easier if you go through as a placement student, because if you were to apply, let's say, in your final year for a graduate position, I'd say you would have a lot more hurdles, for example, assessment centers and interviews upon interviews. But yeah, that is my process of getting the job. Now, I would like to take the last section of my presentation to really give out some things which I picked up from working in the WinWork team, because it is quite transferable. In essence, I have to help, in a way, develop CVs so that clients would shell out multi-million pounds for the company to do work for them. So as a graduate, I think if you are able to apply some of these principles in your CVs or in preparing yourself for the job application process, you would really come out ahead of the competition. So how did I get the job? And really, there were many things that I had to do to prepare myself in order to tackle the application process. So between extracurricular activities, job experiences, academic achievements, it was definitely a lot of effort. But I'd like to tie back why it is that important for you to prepare early to apply for that one job in the future. Because when companies are selecting candidates, they are not actually hiring the person, essentially, but they are hiring your knowledge and your skills to help them compete in the market. So it's really not a checklist thing where if you say you meet your minimum requirements in terms of education or in terms of your skill sets, that you will get the job. That is absolutely not the truth. And really, you have to compete with many different graduates in order to secure the best jobs. When I joined the company, I had to compete with 13 other candidates for my one position. So you can see how much competition there is in the market, especially currently where numerous companies have frozen their hiring. You must be prepared for the extra competition. So to compete, not only do you need to get the right knowledge and the right skills, you really need to know how to sell yourself as a candidate to your various employers. When I help Atkins, leading engineers sell themselves to the clients by writing their CVs, I really keep an eye out for the two things that I'm going to say below. Firstly, do we have the right person for the job? That means, does he have the right skill sets? Does he have the right knowledge? And does he have the relevant experience required to take on that job? I can tell that quite easily looking through their CVs, and I would follow that up with an interview maybe to confirm the details. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And once we determine that the person does have the right skill sets and requirements, but just need a little bit of help, then we step in to help spruce up their CVs and try our best to edit the language and bring up the necessary points to sell their capabilities and put them in the right light. So extending that principle to you as a graduate, companies are most likely aware that you have very limited work experience and so aren't expecting anything over the moon. But you must be prepared to ask yourself the 3 questions on screen. Based on the knowledge and skills that you have, can you add value to the team? So using your experiences, your hobbies, your extracurricular activities, or general interests, what can you bring to the team that other graduates can't? It's a simple question, it's an obvious question, but many people think that they should just do the norm and follow the norm, and then they would suddenly be awarded with the job. That really isn't the case, is it? And how can you bring a unique perspective to the team? Sorry. So, how can you bring a unique perspective to the team? This might be if you have programming experience, can you think more in a more logical manner? If you have a financial background, in any sense, if you are interested in finance, can that help you manage budgets better? So you really have to think about how these really play to your favor. Really use your experience. And lastly, it's what I call the so what factor. Because a lot of graduates nowadays, they do their best to secure the right knowledge and the right experience, but they aren't really good at selling themselves. And the so what factor really brings it out. Let's give you an example. Assume you graduated with a first-class honors from university, and then you tell your employer that, but they would most likely ask, so what? Basically, what can you really get from that experience? And you must really state it explicitly how you can use those unique experiences or unique achievements in your work. Tie it back to how this is applicable to your work and how the employer stands to benefit from the various experiences that you have. So there are really 3 steps for you to position yourself to be successful in getting a job and enhancing your employability. That is essentially the case. You are increasing your appeal to your employers. So there are 3 steps that are understand, position yourself for success, and then reflect, and then begin to sell yourself. So understanding the requirements of the employers is the key part of applying for any job. And you should really tackle this as early as possible when you're in university. When we draft proposals for clients, the first thing we need to do in our WinWork team is to know whether we are meeting our clients' expectations. What are they looking for? What is good to them? What is great to them? Because what we don't want to do is spend loads of time and money developing great proposals, but at the very end, we find out it doesn't check off every single box that the client wants. But when this is extended to you as an applicant, you don't want to be spending years doing something that takes hours and is gruesome, and you gain some good skill, but probably isn't what is required in the employment setting. So get this right first, and then you'll have a better chance of getting the right job. So really take the step to find out, what do engineers really do? And if you're here on this presentation, kudos. I thank you very much for joining us. But really, you are finding out what engineers really do and what employers really want. Really, the universities that you attend are a great platform for you to find out what requirements are in the job market. So there are, let's say, careers events, careers fair, recruitment events, and even networking events. Really take advantage of those, speak to people, and then really, by asking the right questions, draw out what they really care about. Besides that, there are some industry trends that you might want to get yourself, position yourself in, or at least get to know, because these are things that are important in industry. And if you're able to position yourself to explore or get more involved in getting these necessary skills or areas of knowledge, you will be at an advantage. For example, digital delivery. So the construction sector now, we are looking to digitize most of what we do. For example, creating models, for example, building information models, automating certain very repetitive tasks, etc. If you have the capability to do that, that puts you in a good footing to enter the market as a very employable applicant. Sustainability, very obvious, but honestly very overlooked in a CV. How can you help the company enhance their sustainability or practice sustainability in design, whether it is in your coursework, etc. Diversity, that is one very big thing, because the construction sector is a very male-dominated industry, and there are concrete steps being done within industry to help move away from that. How can you encourage other people to join in STEM, especially women or people of minority cultures, etc. Then there is mental health. It is something that is very crucial, especially at this time where a lot of people are working from home or are very isolated. How can you help improve the mental health or advocate for better mental health treatment for people who need them? So those are the industry trends. After understanding what the requirements are, then you move on to positioning yourself for success. That means getting your head stuck in the right activities and the right experiences in order for you to start getting started with your application. So I will give some examples in the next few slides, but it should be clear work experiences are very important, and having the right leadership positions in your extracurricular activities, or even just being a member in some clubs and societies, that would really help you, because these are the things that give you the ammunition for you to approach your application. So really, when you are taking on a new commitment, because you have to bear in mind, you have your academics, you have your social life, I assume, and you have your extracurricular work, and also job applications. If you are looking to get a summer placement in that year, you have to factor in time needed for a proper job application. Are you involving yourself in the right things for your development? Don't just say yes to everything. If something doesn't give you much value, really, it's not worth your time. You have very little left after balancing everything. And can you confidently say that by taking part in that activity, you can tick off some of the employer requirements? Lastly, you would need to reflect, and reflect. think about what you've gained so far. Think how you can best use your experiences that you have gained in a job application, and try to draw out and think about concrete examples of how you have met your employee requirements. For example, a lot of employers are looking for people with good communication skills. Give some evidence of how you have, let's say, that you did a presentation to a group of people, how you prepared for them, how you made sure that your message was clear across, and what was the result of that. And lastly, the so what factor comes in. If you have good communication skills through this, so what? And by answering that, you have to answer, how can you use that skill within a job setting? How can you use that to improve the employer's capabilities? For example, you will be able to communicate better with your colleagues, or you know that engineering projects are very collaborative, so having the right communication skills allows you to better negotiate, etc. Something along those lines. And when you think about your experiences, really think about how you add value to them. As I just said, that's the so what factor. And to be honest, that is quite an important thing, reflecting, because as you get into an engineering career, if you're looking for professional accreditation, for example, becoming a chartered engineer or chartered surveyor, etc., you will need to prepare like reflection journals or reports that show that you have developed, and what experiences can you use to prove that you have developed in a certain area. So this is a very simple framework of how you can look back and think about what work experience you have, what extracurricular activity experiences, and what academic experiences you have that could be useful in an application. So related work experience is very important because it shows that you have an understanding of the industry. It shows that you have developed the right skills to take on the job. For my example, before joining Atkins, I was a two-time BIM engineer at Sunway Construction. And from there, some of my key takeaways was that I had, because I was based on site, I had good construction knowledge because I saw things being built before my eyes. I have experience in using softwares to facilitate building information modeling. And because I had to work under the tight deadlines, I implemented certain lists and certain checklists that helped add value to the process, and in which I communicated to Atkins that I would be able to constructively challenge some of the processes they have, and also deliver efficiencies to the system. And extracurriculars, although not directly applicable in terms of knowledge, they are very useful for you to develop different transferable skills. This will be very important for any competency-based questions that describe a situation where you, etc., questions. So in my experience, I was part of the Sheffield Engineering Leadership Academy, Globalizing Malaysian Talents, and also the Malaysian and Singaporean Society. So I took on different types of leadership roles, which gave me a whole list of different skill sets after I had completed my experience. And academic knowledge, you shouldn't really look past academic knowledge because it is quite important. And especially if you have anything that is considered specialist, or anything that you feel like you have a general interest in. For example, in my case, I used an example of my dissertation, genetic algorithms for engineering optimization. I told them how I was able to use finite element analysis, which is basically like a analysis software. I was able to do programming, etc., and how I was going to use that within my work environment to introduce efficiencies as well. So what else can you do? Really, if you're looking to get the right experience, check out professional institution websites for different events or competitions. These are key platforms for you to network with different people. Understanding the situation, understanding employer requirements, as I said prior, and basically show that you have good motivation and a good proactiveness that allows you to basically showcase that you are the best candidate out there because you have a good understanding of what they require and you have a track record of success and achievement. If you are looking for something a bit more fulfilling, perhaps you can check out your local charity shop and volunteer for some work because some of these require very key skills, for example, communication, proactivity. That is one important thing. And if you want, you can also check out your students' union for different clubs and societies that you can get yourself involved in, and especially in globalizing Malaysian talents, as we are here today thanks to them. And lastly, it is summer placements and research projects, really maximizing the use of your summers, because these are, you don't get a lot of time during your academic year to pursue too many things, but during the summer, you have a whole block of time to do more intensive development activities, for example, working on special research projects that give you an edge over your competitors. And once you have gained the right experience and the right knowledge in order to position yourself for success, and when it comes to filling in your application, you would be in a very solid position to fill it in, especially if you've done the reflection quite frequently. The steps are quite similar to the 3 steps: understand, position, and sell that I mentioned before this. This is firstly, understand what the employer or specific job is looking for. Go through their actual job advert, highlight some of the requirements that they have said. Don't just look through what the general requirements are. For example, the bullet points at the bottom of the screen there. Actually read through the whole advert. You will see some of the skills and traits that they want in their ideal candidate, as I have done on screen here. They are looking for someone who is customer focused. So have you been a waiter, etc. That allows you to basically service your customers. They want someone who is proactive. So any volunteer work that you can say you did, etc. So once you have gone through basically their job advert and highlighted every single keyword that you can find, now it's time to draft your application. The important thing you need to remember is to keep it as simple as possible because reviewers really are looking at many, many different applications. And if there were 500 candidates applying for one job and each job has a CV of 2 pages, that's 1,000 pages. And trust me, they don't want to read anything that's too bombastic. Keep your words simple. Make sure your language is very readable and avoid anything that's negative that could cause any reason for them to doubt you. The best policy is to use back the words that you found in the job advert. For example, if on the screen we see that they want someone who is proactive, you can say, as a research student, I proactively approach an industry mentor for more information, etc. Something like that. And for your language, keep it simple. There are a few pitfalls that people typically do. Even the best engineers in our company does that, and which we always have to remind them to avoid. And these are fluff, guff, geek, and weasel. So just to give you an example, fluff means using very bombastic, very fancy words in your application, executable, expedite, expenditure. They don't need that. Keep it simple. Guff, trying to use many words to express very little points. That is a waste of space. If you have the content, you don't need to do that. And always try to shorten whatever is possible so that it packs the most punch. Lastly, it's weasel, which means if you've done something, just own it. Don't try to use weak words to create any sort of doubt within the reviewers. If you say you did something or you say you will do something, you say you will, they'll say you hope. And that really does make a difference, because when people read it, their first impressions will be a lot more positive if you are more forceful in your language. And keep the energy up. So that is all I have to share today, and I really hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now, or you can contact me personally at my email as shown on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the talk, Lucas. So this is the end of the talk. So we will now proceed to the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please just either pop it down in the Zoom chat lobby, or you could vote a yes, then ask your questions directly to Lucas. So without wasting any time, in the meantime, we have some questions for Lucas. So the first question is, what should an undergraduate civil engineer early in their studies do early on for a better chances of employment?
Well, as I said, really make use of time you have in university, because that is when you have the most freedom to be able to position yourself for success. When you're first into university, you probably don't know much. That's why go to careers events, go to networking events, find out from people what is needed and what they really want in ideal candidate. What are some of the most impressive people doing within their company? And then once you know that, you know the traits, for example, being proactive, having certain kinds of specialist knowledge, and really then find out what experiences you need and what opportunities there are within the 3 or 4 years you have in university to get those traits. And getting the right knowledge and the right skills is a matter of commitment. Involve yourself in as many activities as you can that could help you enhance your employability and your value. For example, as I said, in competitions, or join different clubs or societies, network with different kinds of people. And one thing which I find is especially helpful is to get an industrial mentor. I'm sure there are certain initiatives within universities for you to get connected with professionals, maybe senior engineers or graduate engineers like myself who have recently gone through the application process. Really make use of those. And as you go through your knowledge and your experience and your extracurriculars, write things down. That is very important. Actually write things down. Write what you did, how you did it, and what are some of the traits that you think you have achieved. And this is exactly the same process I am currently following now in order to get my chartership status with the Institution of Civil Engineers. It's a lot of reflecting. It's a lot of keeping track of what you actually did. And then once you are there, also make use of your time to get as many placements as possible, because that is the most effective thing that you can do at the moment. After that, once you have everything combined, and then you apply for a job, like a graduate job in the UK, you have all of that information at hand. It will make it a lot easier for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, that was a very good answer. So I hope that everyone can take out some important notes from that answer. So the next question is from Alif. So his question is, how to build your reputation on networking, especially when everything is virtual currently?
Building your rep on networking. I think there is some merit to the question, but essentially many people are working virtually now. They know that it's basically just communicating with different people. If you're working if you're networking virtually, perhaps you can get their contact information and try to contact them outside of the context if you're struggling to basically fit in a large group. I know I certainly struggle with that. So it's possibly a lot easier if you are able to schedule like a one-on-one call. I myself am quite open to helping as many people as possible outside of work. If you are looking to build your rep on networking, I'm not quite sure what rep means. Is it reputation?
I assume that is reputation. Alif, you could correct it if yeah, if we interpret it wrongly. Yeah, reputation.
Okay. So if you're doing things virtually, what I find helpful is to bring the conversation off the networking event, because networking is essentially you trying to get in contact with different people, get to know different people, and then continuing your relationship with them outside of those calls. During those calls, just really get to know them, ask them a few good questions. You can be surprised how people are sometimes impressed by people who ask the right questions, and then take the conversation outside of the networking event. It is a lot more important that you persist in trying to get their contact and get in contact with them than trying to impress everyone in a one-off networking event. From my experience, I have been in a few of these networking events as a grad rep. A lot of people talk to us. Not everybody's face gets into our mind. But I remember those who actually send the email follow-up to me, and I would do as much as I can to help them secure like a work experience or something for, let's say, a week or so.
Okay, there's Alif. So I hope that answers your question. So if you have any further questions, you can ask. So the next question is from Wei Thing. So what would you say is your greatest achievement so far in Atkins?
I think there are a lot of things that I am proud of. Firstly, being able to manage my own project with barely a year's experience. That is something that I was quite proud of, and it turned out quite well. So that was pretty good. I think just being able to speak to younger minds, that always makes me feel quite proud. For example, on a few occasions, I went to different schools and different colleges, basically, to speak to their local students, and then I help them secure a work experience. And then when you actually see them open up, when they are in the office, they get a lot more interested in what you're doing, and they basically come back for more. I would say that would be my greatest achievement.
Okay. So the next question is, from your experience, could you please share with us how do you adapt to your company's culture?
I would say always be open to new information, because the culture has never really been an issue. Obviously, there are a lot of things that are quite different, because we live in two different sides of the world. The entire culture is different. For example, having a work-life balance, and also hierarchies in UK companies matter a lot less, especially in Atkins. Not in the sense that there are no hierarchy. Of course, there's a hierarchy. You report to someone, you do a lot of these things, but it is a lot easier for you to open up and share your opinions with your superiors. You will never really need to be afraid. They encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. And as you get stuck into the process, as you get started at work, just be open, just be willing to ask those questions. And essentially, you would just slowly assimilate. There has never really been an issue with me with this regard, because you just, it's like almost autopilot. You just glide into the momentum that they have over there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So you have You have to have an open mind to accept whatever um, comments or new knowledge that is applied during your career. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
that is
next
correct.
question is from Kaliang. So what is the single most challenging issue you faced in your career?
Um, I would say, and I think this still applies to this day, is to work very collaboratively with people of all levels. And I say this specifically in my current position in WinWork, because a lot of people we work with, um, these are people who are very knowledgeable, experts in their field, but they are also notoriously busy and stressed out at times. So sometimes you might not have like the right connection with them, and things can get off the wrong foot. But essentially, it's how you manage your expectations and also how you manage the way you communicate. You obviously have to be very professional in everything that you do. Um, Dealing with people is the hardest part, and I believe will be the hardest part in any engineer's career. You have to deal with clients on a daily basis. You have to deal with different managers, different senior principal engineers, senior engineers, and you need to secure their cooperation. So you really need to think from their perspective, have empathy, try to put everything in a way that is as easy as possible for them. You have to know the right way to communicate. You have to be professional. You have to be nice, and basically just keep taking the punches as they come. Really, if there is any challenge that you face, you're not facing it alone. Consult with your team in order to move things forward. And that is one of the biggest advice I can give people. You will face many adversities, especially with dealing with people. You have to be adaptable. You have to be able to utilize the experience of your team to be able to tackle any situations that come along. And most importantly, just persist. Just keep going forward. Just keep moving forward. Don't stop. Don't just say, I give up. That never works. One way or the other, you have to get the job done.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah. So the next question is, do you suggest working in the construction field or designing field? So as in construction field, it means like on site, and then as in designing field, as in designing or consulting inside of the office.
I would say to each his own. Some people like to be in the office and they like producing design. They're really good at maths. They enjoy the modeling side of stuff, and they could really get used to the cozy office life. I mean, I have chosen this life because I much prefer being in an office, churning out designs of my own, because I would think that I created something from within my mind, and don't get me wrong. Sometimes I like being out on field. Um, if you are looking for um, something that's more hands-on, working in construction would be the way to go. You are interacting with a lot more people. You are directly responsible in seeing things getting built. There is definitely a niche skill set that contractors have that consultants definitely don't. Um, I would say if you are looking to get chartered, consultancy is the way to go, because you get a lot more exposure. You get a lot of support from your colleagues who are most likely going through the same process. Especially in a company like Atkins, we have a specific graduate development program, which means you are set with two mentors, one supervising civil engineer and one what do you call that? A delegated supervising engineer, etc. And they basically provide you support. They guide you through the design process, and they would basically have a good idea about how you can basically get through those, let's say, chartership requirements. I feel it's a little bit harder to do on a construction site. I might be wrong. I have some limited knowledge of working on site. In terms of the technical aspects, you might struggle to get more information on those. Because if you're stuck doing the same job on the construction site, and a site takes like years, you're basically you're wasting a lot of time if you're just doing the same thing. It's a lot easier to move from project to project to learn different aspects as a consultant.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. So the next question is, what's the main difference between civil engineering and civil and structural engineering, and does it matter when applying for a job?
I would say civil engineering is a very broad set of engineering, and structural engineering is a sub-aspect of civil engineering. So structural engineering belongs in civil engineering, but for some reason it has been combined as a title within my university degree. Civil and structural engineering basically means that you have more hands-on experience doing design of structures, whereas civil engineering, you would have more exposure towards like geotechnical engineering or drainage, or I'm not quite sure what other forms of civil engineering are there, but it is much more broader than structural engineering. Structural engineering has to do with the structure itself, designing like buildings or assessing bridges, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You say okay. Thanks for the sharing. So proceeding to the next question, I think is the last question. So in light of the current COVID-19 situations, so are there any changes in the recruitment process and requirements, and how do we tackle them? Do you have any advice on that?
First thing that jumps to mind, it is a lot more competitive. A lot of companies are freezing their new hires. They aren't hiring any new people. So you can seriously relate that it is a lot more competitive now. And especially if you are an international student, you have to compete with all the local students who have basically lost their jobs for the market. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. You just have to be better than them. So in terms of the recruitment process, everything is online now. I'm not sure how you feel. Sometimes I am glad to have things done online instead of being within like a room with, let's say, 10 to 20 people trying to steal the attention of the one supervisor within the room in assessment centers. So everything's online. Interviews would probably be conducted virtually. There is a heavy focus on moving everything online. So everything is virtual. One thing that Alif's question did spark in my mind is that sometimes it's harder to say you're basically take part in discussions online because especially if you have 20 people in the same room, in the same chat room, even just trying to speak over one another is just absolutely horrible. So you might just have to, as I said, bring the conversation offline. And if you're looking to apply for a job, just, let's say, just be prepared to do a lot of these things online. It might be easier for some, it might not be easier for some, but really to each his own. And if you were to take a placement now, everything will be happening online as well. I think that is good news to some and bad news for those who like to travel, I think.
Okay, so thank you for the answer. And there's one more question from Wei Fing. So I guess this is a summary of what you have been telling us during the talk. So what tips would you give to interns or placement students in trying to stand out or hopefully being offered a job at the end of an internship?
I think it is a matter of being quite thirsty for learning. Always be willing to embrace different challenges. When a person gives you something to do, it might be slightly challenging. It might even seem monotonous to you. Just do it. Take your time to actually network with people within your office. Actually go talk to them, find out what they think I need you need to do to be a good engineer is the understanding portion again. And building that rapport with them does go a long way in helping you secure an internship. A lot of people tend to go on autopilot when they join a job, basically just accepting instructions and basically not doing anything. You can try proposing certain things or trying to be involved in a more social manner, try to involve more be involved in more company events, etc., and just to build that relationship. And lastly, if you're working for one of the bigger companies, just take a look at whether they offer a graduate development program. I think it's more important for you to get the right job than it is for you to basically get a job. I know people who are stuck in jobs that they don't really like because they're doing the same things, but it's more important for you to get the right job, I think.
Yeah.
If you're trying to stand out, just be very curious, be let's say sociable with people and build that relationship with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the attitude of learning is very important. That you show to your employers that you have the thirst to learn. Okay, so is there any more questions? So if not, I think that marks an end for today's session. So thank you all once again and see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucas.